Now with all the things we got going on, I try to every night take the list, condense it, get rid of the things that I've done and make what I call an updated list. Now the reason for having this is now I know the next couple steps on this, the rear bulkhead, and then I want to complete the entire take-apart system, because what happens is pretty much every day I've been working with Doran's prop mold in the beginning of the day, getting it all set, and then I try to go down my list one item at a time. And once I update the list, I can get rid of this, and then I have the master list. One by one, as these things get done, I cross them off the master list. But it's easy for me to work off a list. And knowing the sequence you're going to do things, and a lot of times I'll look at this and say, oh geez, I want to do that before that, I want to change that. Or some of the shop projects, I try to prioritize them, but working off a list, always a good thing. Now you can see what the deal is. Solid ice. Solid. We get up this morning, it's 9 degrees, and the wind is already starting to howl. So there's no way. See, what's real nice about this is there's no decision. We don't have to make a decision if we're going to fly the ARF, going to fly the 90 ship, or we're going to build. We're going to make props and build. Just makes it easy. Ice on the pond is where I draw the line. I also got this great little thing. Somebody may be able to pick up on this idea. This is my bedroom window up here, and I hung the wind chimes up this summer, and whenever I hear the wind chimes going at basically at 7 o'clock in the morning, I know we're not going flying today. It's going to be a hurricane in another hour, and it's already, the wind chill is below 0, so we're going to build. So step one is we have 2 props already made. We did those on the last DVD. We got a third one here. I have a couple more little experiments to run, but I can do this off camera. This is getting redundant, and if anybody is really excited about seeing, we're just going to put little bits and pieces here as we use Doran's mold. Now there's a funny story, and you can't make this up. This you couldn't make up. I go over to my answering machine. I might have told this story the other day. I go over to the answering machine. There's like a 10-minute message. Oh, windy, and it's in Romanian. And at the end of the message, it's Doran, and he says, oh, Windy, I forgot you don't speak Romanian, so I'll call you tomorrow. Don't worry about this message. Well, Doran never called back. I had to figure this out on my own. And we got a lot of stuff to be thinking about in the next couple days. Scoops, finishing that fuselage. But first I need my coffee, big time. Okay, we got our third prop out of the mold. It's reloaded, number 4 is in the mold now. I'm getting a little bit faster at doing it anyway. Okay, now the next step on this is going to be, I've got the bulkheads, both sides done on the bulkheads. And I need to start doing a fit to make sure there's a nice tight fit up in the front. So the next step on this for me is going to be, I need to bolt this in, all 4 bolts, and then lay out the back. Actually, I got to lay out the back and then make up the sides as the next step on this. See, if you have this, and I've got a little priority list that I've been working with, because when I get down here and I start doing the mold and everything, I kind of forget what I was doing. Well, I forget everything anyway. But I need to make the 2 fuse sides. I need to get the bulkhead pegged in place, make sure I'm in exact neutral. But the first thing is to bolt this all up in the front. Now, I made the mistake years ago of thinking you didn't have to put all 4 bolts in. All 4 bolts are necessary so this gets in perfect alignment. I don't want to make that same mistake again. Always get the 4 bolts in, and then you can level up the back or make any adjustment up here that you need to make, because getting this former in place is a very, very critical thing to get our center lines. We already got the center lines up here. We need to get the center lines back there. Okay, now all of the bolts are in, torqued down. Now the biggest and most important thing is that when we line this up, I want to keep this parallel. I put 2 equal little spots of scraps of balsa there. And now I know if I press down on this and it bottoms out, I'm still on center. Right with the center line, I'm right on center, which is good. So the next step is to bolt this piece in and make sure I have it attached. Now I have a little angle put on this, and I'm hoping that I haven't changed anything. It'll just bolt right in there, and then I can put some little stock here to hold that in place while I make up these fuselage side pieces. And that's why it's good to make these up ahead of time. Now as I go about getting ready to glue this former in, what I can see is as I'm putting this former in and I line up the bolts, I'm putting a little bit of pressure on a wing. So I need to find a high spot. Just like a sheetrock fit, I need to find that high spot, and I know it's right here. I've looked at it. So right along here, I need to get, and this is a good way to do it, by the way. And I'm going to need to make clearance because I'm going to edge this in 64th plywood, so I need to have some clearance along the way. A little bit of extra clearance, not going to be a deal breaker, but the point is this has to float, and when I say float, it needs to go in and grab 4 bolts without hitting anything here. We need clearance here. It has to float, and you can't make it tight that you're pulling this together or pushing it apart. It's got to be a drop fit, and it locks everything in place. And usually, if you leave a little bit of slop on everything, you can just make up the slop with the 64th plywood very conveniently. Now if I were to just put these bolts in, I could press this down and tighten them, but it would be putting pressure here, and I'd have to remove it there anyway when I go to put the edging in. So I may as well do it right now. And it doesn't take a lot. It just takes a couple of swipes of the sandpaper. In fact, I feel the hard spot is right at the end of the doubler, because right here is the hard spot. So I need to sand that out, and that part wants to just drop in, the 4 bolts, and they line right up. It isn't like you push them and twist them, and it's a very nice fit when it just drops in, like a door shutting on an expensive car. It just goes and locks in place. Okay, we're ready. I've got this shimmed out just so it's perfectly equal on both sides, and it's real close anyway. But now I have to make a fake piece here. I have to just tack glue this on with a piece that'll just hold this in place like a doubler. It's only there so that I can get this in place to lay out the fuse side. I can put a drop of thick CA there or epoxy, but I don't want to take any chance that I'm gluing that bulkhead together. In other words, I don't want to stick some thin CA in there. Now it took quite a bit of fitting. I thought we were a lot luckier, but you can see there's still one little hard spot there. We're going to have to address that when we put that little plywood fillet in there. Don't have to take it all apart and do it right now. The next step is to get that little piece so it's permanently part of the wing. Now I want to make sure when I make these little fake pieces, because they're going to actually act as doublers, I want the grain going corner to corner. I need to get the shape. And they're going to hold it, actually they're going to hold it in place for quite a while until we get the fuse side pattern made. And that's a complex pattern. Okay, so now we have a pattern. But now I want to get the grain going corner to corner in this piece. That's very important not to have the grain going on any of these triangle pieces. It should always be going corner to corner. Now again, it's free, I think it's a safe word here, is free flight technology, triangulation. But again, if you don't have the grain going in the right position, it's amazing how much stronger something can be when the grain is going in the right position. I want the grain corner to corner. In every triangle piece that I make, I'll make a pattern and then get it so the grain is going in the right direction. Again, these pieces need to be fit very accurately. I don't want to have any compromise here. little bit less angle, and each time you make a pattern, just getting a few adjustments on it. I call them sanding block adjustments, because then we can safely take the wing out of the body, and this piece will stay in this alignment. Now the whole thing has to come apart now, because I want to make permanent glue joints there. And I don't want to take a chance putting any thin CA or any kind of glue back there where there's any chance it's going to glue the whole assembly back together. But as long as I'm going to pull this apart again, I can get rid of this high spot. I just need to mark where it is. It's right, I can mark it in my mind here. And I need to have a little bit of clearance here. I want to make sure I have, this side's fine. I have clearance on everything. And this should, in effect, hold this in position while we start to lay out these next parts. And this is one of the more critical parts of the job, because I have to make a joint up here, I have to make a joint back there, and I want to get a nice fit on the wing. Now, this last little bit I need to trim off here just to give myself a little clearance, and just to put that 64th plywood edge in there. I don't want to take any more than I have to, because I'm only going to have to fill it with glue. But now that it's all apart too, and the next step on this, and once I get that clearance set, then I can start laying out these fuselage sides as a pattern. I have firm edges, and I need to get the curve, and I'll leave them a little bit thicker than they have to be. Then when it's back in the fuselage, I can trim that off. Now it's a problem. This is still delicate. I'm going to glue this, make this as hard as possible now. Get a good glue seam on it, but I need to get the fuselage sides, I need to get them tacked in while the fuselage is here, so that I don't have any variance. So I don't want to have this that it doesn't line up, or that I have to do a lot of extra sanding. But now it's nice. When we're at this point, from this point on, it's kind of all downhill. It's relatively easy. Getting these two formers that this just drops right in, isn't hitting anything, and locks in both ends. That's the hardest part. So the next step is where these fuselage sides are going to be. I just need to just lightly scuff up the silver, just to get a little bit better bite. But I have my two edges to work from. Now a lot of times, if you're really lucky, and we're never lucky, so you don't have to worry, you can use the piece that came out and just reverse the cut. Well, sometimes it's good to do that for a pattern, but I find that by the time you put all these cuts in and edges and angles, the part is always short. So sometimes it's just better just to make up another part, another pattern, another part. And we've got these pieces, but I'm not sure we can use them. Now we have that sanded out. Now what I'm going to do is use this piece. This is the piece that we actually cut out just as a pattern. See, I think it's going to be too small. We've already cut enough away. So what I need to do is get the pattern that we used to make the wing cut out, leave it a little positive, and then just start dropping it down. In the worst, we'll have a pattern that'll be undersized on both ends. Now luckily we do have the pattern, so this should be relatively easy to do. Famous last words. Now I have to know just how close I am at the front by about a 1/64 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, how close we are at the back. And this will just be a wild guess, but at least at the end of it we'll wind up with a pattern, I hope. And the trick will be, as it always is just leave the incline on. And that'd be our rough way to start making our pattern. But again, I'll leave it just a little bit oversized, and then just start sanding, and dropping it down in position, like a sheetrock fit. Now, this piece is still undersized on both ends, but we've got a pretty good fit here, so I think we're going to kind of quit while we're ahead. because I don't want to glue this in place. I want to tack it in place when it's in the fuselage. So I'm going to basically quit while I'm ahead here and make up the other piece. And if I need to make this piece over or extend it on the end, I can put maybe a piece of real hard 1/8 inch out on the end. I'm trying to think this through, because what's happened with the 2 saw cuts, that piece got shortened. So, but it's not shortened by enough that I'm going to worry about it. So the next step is going to be just to simply just make the other side up. And I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to lay out my thought here. Then I'm going to put this all back together and then only glue this in place. Once this is in place and I can line up either the front or the back, I can see how much material I have to add to it. Now what I did, I just tacked this front piece in. It's tacked here. It's tacked back here because I don't want to take a chance on getting any CA down in here and locking everything together. So I'll do the same thing with the other side. Then I'll pull it apart and run glue along all of these seams. And then what I'm going to have to do is just make a filler piece that's going to match up here. And I'll look for some rock hard balsa for that. And that makes up for the saw cut and a filler piece for back there. Yeah, it's dried up. Now I can work on getting that second piece in. And now the thing is to see if we got perfectly flat there. That bulkhead sticks up a little bit, but that's pretty flat. I've got to put an angle on. What's happened here is the bulkhead is sticking up. Just need to put an angle on that and then run a flat. I can actually run this sanding block down there. It's only sticking up on this side too. Okay, now I'm ready to take that nice and flat. Now I need that because this block has got to match up to the cowling, and if one is up high or lower, it's going to be a problem. I also need to dress these edges off. And I also need to make spacers. Where this piece is short, I'll do that last. I want to get all the edges flat first. Okay, what I did, I put a fillet of thick CA inside. The next step on this is going to be to pull it all apart and then make permanent glue joints here. Everything here is really not permanent. I want to saturate everything with thin CA, but you sure don't want to do that anywhere when that wing is in place, unless you're looking to make a one-piece plane. And boy, if there ever is one way that one drop can get down inside something, believe me, it will. And I really, looking at this from a lot of angles, we got the top level. I got to make these little filler pieces. Now see, this side, the filler was tight. This side, because of the saw cuts, I have to sand something out. So I'm just going to make a little piece there, and it'll be even with the top of the bulkhead. It'll be easy to fit, relatively easy to fit. Well, I've got all these little edges filled in, and this is probably all I'm going to get done tonight. I took the ball end router and routed out some of the extra material there just to get a little bit of extra weight out. Thin CA on all the joints. And the only problem we're going to have now, and this is a big problem, got John DeTavio's birthday coming up tomorrow. Not a problem. We're looking forward to it. But this is about all we're going to get done tonight. And it's a good, I'll tell you, this was, as I look over here, this was one of the better sessions. And we pretty much have this, well, the next thing, and what I'm going to do is update my list of what I want to do. I think tomorrow the next thing, or if I get to work in the morning, is the top edge of this. Let me put this under the light. The top edge of this has to become 64th plywood, and then pretty much we can make the handle. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to update my list and maybe get a short session tomorrow morning and finalize that wing fit. We're about 1 day away from finalizing a wing fit. Now this morning's job, and because we only have a short session, we don't have a lot of time. Tonight is John DeTavio's birthday party. I want to line these edges with 64th plywood like I've done on the Testarossa and on pretty much all of these take-apart planes, because what that does, it gives you a nice hard edge to work off and get a nice finish on. Now there's a couple of things that can really be a problem with this. Now getting that nice tight edge that looks like an ink line, what the 64th plywood does, it gives you that edge and you're able to block sand on it. But even more important, as the paint is building up on both surfaces, you can just conveniently run a piece of 600 sandpaper down there to maintain that edge and maintain the clearance. Now what happens whenever I've taken these apart, there may or may not be some little spots where they're rubbing and it wears through the paint. Well, then you know you can just get in there with some 600 sandpaper, put a little bit of extra CA or dope on the part to seal it, and you maintain that edge. And actually a lot of people that looked at these planes don't even know that they're take-apart planes unless you look real closely, and that's, of course, that's what we're after. And the first step is going to be to put this all back together with all the screws and make sure that we have enough clearance along all the edges. We can't have a hard spot, and it looks like we may have a hard spot right there, because what I'm going to do is insert Teflon sheets in here, and the Teflon sheet is going to give me the clearance at least to start with. The Teflon sheet makes up for the fact that there'll be paint on here and paint on the wing eventually, and that'll kind of seal a gap. So ultimately we're going to look to just, when we're done, just have the equivalent of an ink line. Now while I have it together here, these edges for the first time, they're all together. What I want to do is just pick up the high spots, spend a few minutes getting these even before we even go any further. The idea is in the end to make all the joints look as close to what ink lines would look like as possible. Takes a little extra time, we don't care. Really looking forward to this little get together with John tonight. John has been a lifelong friend, truly a lifelong friend. Now I'll just go around, do all 4 of those joints before I get into making the top fillets. Now at this point in time, if I wanted to, I could make fillets. Dave Midgley had decided he wanted fillets on his Cardinal. Very easy to do, and then bring the fillet around. But I don't want fillets. I want everything angular, square corners. Now I have to be sure before I do anything else that I can take a piece of, this is 220 sandpaper, and I can run it the whole length. Now up here I'm going to run into the belt crank mount at some point in time, but I need to have enough clearance. And if I don't, I need to make some clearance. And check the other side too. And once I have the exact clearance, or close to what I want, I need to get a sheet of that, either Teflon or something that's going to keep me from having that 64th plywood stick to the wing itself. Now, this is ordinary sheet Teflon. There's nothing tricky about this. If you were to need a piece of this, I got this from Dave Midgley, but I'd be glad to share what I have. This is very handy for a lot of things. Now I need a straight edge on this. What this is going to do is keep the fillet. First off, it's going to establish the clearance. And it's also going to, and I got to get this a little bit tighter of a joint in here, a 1/4 of an inch off. What it's going to do is allow me to just tack glue this fillet in place with thick CA, which will hold it in place until I can get a good joint from the inside. I need to take it apart. And I think this is pretty much the way we've done even the bombers. And it's worked pretty well. Okay, that gets me inside. Now I got to figure out how far. I need to take a little notch out for the bell crank mount. Just so I don't, the idea that I don't have any glue going inside here, even thick CA can be a problem. And some of the times I've done this, what I've done is just put this in before you put the wing in, but then I don't like having it down there where it may be an interference fit, if possible. That's going to work fine. Now I can tape that in place. And again, I'll take the tape, rub it on my old dusty, dirty old shirt here, and just hold this in place with a couple little spots of tape. Do the other side, and then I'll be ready to cut the 64th plywood up. Now, if we were going to make a fillet, we leave this piece sit out 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, and build our air epoxy light fillet. In this case, we want angular edges. I've gotten away from doing any fillets at all. I just like the look of 90-degree edges. Now I'll get the other side done and then prep up and get ready to cut the 64th plywood. Now I've got a piece of 64th plywood with the grain going this way so that it's really flexible, but I've got a good end grain. And this is really delicate. Most of the time I do this, I got to do it 3 or 4 times. What I want to do is take a piece of sandpaper and just fold it over and just put some dust on this, because the dust will act as a filler and it'll also help kick off the CA without using kicker. Just leave the dust on. Look at this. Even on a weekend I'm getting calls. Now I've got that sanded down. Now I can slide this in and it'll bend, and I just need to get little filler pieces any place that it hangs up. But I want it also to be relatively nice tight fit. In fact, I got to shorten this up just a little bit. It's over length by a tiny amount. Whoop. And that's too tight of a fit. I'm going to put some sandpaper in there. I don't want to have it that tight. I know I got a spot here where it's a little bit. Because I don't want this rubbing anywhere either. Now, the final thing, I'll fold this over just to see. About 2 layers of sandpaper is what I really need for this material. And I should have that same fit for the whole length. Now when I go to slide this in, I just need to find if it's hanging up on anything. And that I've got it pretty parallel. That looks like it's going to be fine. Now this little spot up here is a spot I always have to put that extra little kink in. Now if you just take ordinary toothpicks, and I don't want to press down, I want to get a nice even pressure. I want to pick up that line of the wing airfoil. And believe me, if you try to sand or carve